Good afternoon and welcome to our ILC Lunchtime Conversations, brought to you by the ILO Future of Work podcast series. We're coming to you from the International Labour Conference here at the Palais des Nations in Geneva. Each day, we're going to explore a key topic shaping the world of work with guests from all over the world who will share their insights and their experiences. Today, we are going to look at how employer and business membership organizations and workers' organizations are putting sustainability into action. Since early 2024, from the ILO Bureau for Employers Activities, and the Bureau for Workers' Activities, also known as ACTEMP and ACTRAV, they have been working closely with more than 16 organizations from different regions to promote and implement social and environmental policies in different countries. On one hand, through the LEADER program, employers' organizations are helping businesses becoming more sustainable by offering training and sharing knowledge. At the same time, the Bureau for Workers' Activities is working with young trade union leaders to promote green jobs, build skills, and have a say in future policies. And to give you an example of what we're talking about, we're going to take a closer look of how this is all playing out in the Philippines, a country on the front lines of climate change and economic transformation. And we're going to hear directly from the organizations that are driving change. So let me now introduce you to our panelists. We have Laura Greene, who's Senior Program and Operation Officers at ACTEMP, the Bureau for Employers Activities at the ILO. Hi, Laura. Thank you for being with us. We have Roland Moya, who's Director General of the Employers Confederation at the Philippines. Thank you very much for being here. We have Gigi Martinez Mathay, who's Director for National and International Affairs at the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, the country's largest labor organization. Thank you very much, Gigi, for being with us. And last but not least, we have Ariel Castro, who's Desk Officer for Asia and the Pacific at ACTRAV, the Bureau for Workers' Activities here at the ILO. So we're going to have by the global picture, and then we'll talk about the Philippines. My first question is to you, Ariel. So Ariel, from the workers' perspective, why is it important to engage young trade union leaders in the sustainability agenda?
Hello. Thank you very much. And I think it's good that we're having this conversation in the midst of the frenzy around the International Labor Conference. And I'm happy to be part of this panel. I think from our perspective at ACTRA, there are four generally essential elements why, from an ILO perspective, this matters. And from a worker's perspective, one is because young people generally provide intergenerational equity and becoming future ready by bringing in issues around in the discussions around climate justice, green jobs, and inclusive growth. Also, especially the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. I think the young people are being able to ensure that the sustainability agenda is indeed relevant. Apart from that, I think the elements of union revitalization comes into the picture, because I think we all know for a fact that all over the world in majority countries, union decline is a major challenge. And I think by bringing in the perspectives of young people and the sustainable development agenda, the young people are even more bringing energy and revitalization into the trade union movement, which is really needed during this time. And I think the third element is around being able to provide an inclusive element into the whole discussions, because I think by ensuring that our advocacy efforts are inclusive, bringing in young people's perspective, we are able to make sure that the young people or our policies even are able to be more inclusive than ever. And the last part is, of course, being strategic and innovative, because I think young people's energy, as I said, bring a lot of energy, a lot of strategic foresight into the sustainability agenda, which we all need at this very juncture of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Laura, from the employer's perspective, can you tell us more about how the LEADER program is supporting employers' organizations in strengthening their environmental social practices?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Isabel, and thanks for the opportunity for the dialogue today. Through the LEADER program, firstly, just to say we called it the LEADER program because we really saw this as an opportunity for employee organizations to lead on this topic. We framed it particularly around environmental, social, and governance issues, although we see that this looks different in different parts of the world. So, for example, we've been working in Latin America, in Africa, and also in Asia Pacific, and Roland will give you a very good example of what we've been doing on the ground there. But generally, overall, we focused a lot on the development of training services for employer organizations. So, very practically, this means that for us here at global level, we've worked on the development of the tools as well as the training materials, and supported the employer organizations in adapting this to their national contexts so that then in the future they're able to offer this as a sustainable service going forward. Secondly, we're also looking at the aspect of advocacy, and here I'll give you an example. We're working in Tanzania at the moment to look at understanding the sustainable finance landscape, I should say. Of course, it's linked to legislation sometimes too. But in that case, we're really looking at what is the role of the employer organization there in terms of advocating for access to sustainable finance. We know that once we have, for example, a cohort of enterprises that have been trained on ESG, they're going to need to be able to implement some of these practices. So in this case, we're really looking at how does the employer organization there advocate for these opportunities and to make that more available, particularly, for example, to small and medium-sized enterprises as they look to bring about these changes. So we've really tried, in terms of the way we've developed this program, to look at where the national needs are and to have this adapted to that context. Because I think sometimes we understand ESG often as, originating in different parts of the world. But really we've seen, and it's been great to see this, is it's been driving a lot of national conversations. And what does this mean in the particular countries? How is it linked to responsible business conduct, which a lot of employee organizations already offer services on, for example? So these are some of the two key things that we've been working on. And then linked to that, particularly, for example, linked to the training services, we also see that there's a big opportunity for employer organizations to engage more in advisory services. As there are more increasing reporting requirements, for example, on ESG, we see that direct support to enterprises is also going to be necessary in the future. So these are I would say, the three key things that we've seen, and the 8 organizations that we've been working with, they've really started with understanding what their context is, and because a lot of the ESG legislation is in different parts of, falls under different aspects, social, environment, etc. And then also a kind of undertaking an advocacy with their own membership in the sense of awareness raising, understanding where they need to start, and then in turn following that with services and support going forward. So yeah, we've seen great progress made across the regions, and very happy to have Roland to share more with us.
Thank you very much, Laura. And now let's see what's actually happening on the ground. And we have our partners here from the Philippines. Gigi, let's start with you. The trade union you represent has been deeply engaged in both national and international discussions on climate and labor. How are you making sure that Filipino workers, especially young people, as Ariel was saying, have a voice in shaping a just transition?
Thank you for the opportunity to share the things that we've been doing in the Philippines, of course, through ILO. But anyway, just to put things in perspective, just transition in the Philippines have different levels of understanding and engagements. And I think this is where the challenge and the opportunity comes. But to ensure that Filipino workers, especially the young workers in the Philippines, are able to understand and shape just transition, we collaborate with various organizations. I think we've had a lot of other programs which we have done with different GUFs, especially with ILO Actrav. We've done a leadership program towards just transition. We've also formed networks and platforms for youth engagement. And these initiatives involve youth leaders for climate action, maritime protection, and of course, core of it all is social justice and decent work. These efforts help to amplify their voices and influence in organizing and eventually the decision-making processes. So these are efforts like the just concluded Leadership for Just Transition in cooperation with ILO ACTRA. We also have the Youth for Just Transition, which is a collaboration of different other organizations for the youth. And we also have other advocacy through different platforms. And of course, we use social media and we provide training and upskilling and capacity building with the help of the global organizations which we reach out to. In a national policy level, TUCP is a labor center with its legislative arm, the TUCP party list, also has just filed a resolution in our parliament on signifying the commitment of the House of Representatives of the Philippines on the promulgation of a just transition framework to ensure that no worker is left behind. So we hope to be able to push this in the next term that we will be sitting in Congress, to be able to build a policy and a law for protection for just transition for the workers.
Thank you, Gigi. We also have with us Roland Moya, who's Director General of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Roland, how is your organization supporting business in the Philippines to integrate sustainability into their operations? Give me some examples.
Yeah, thank you for that question. At the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, we are helping Philippine businesses embed sustainability into their operations in both practical and strategic ways. First, we raise awareness and build capacity. We regularly host learning sessions, policy dialogues, and workshops that focus on ESG themes, for example, responsible business conduct, climate resilience, human rights due diligence, and just transition. These are not just buzzwords. They're concrete frameworks that help businesses future-proof themselves. Second, we developed a tool called the SDG Value Scan. This helps companies, especially micro, small, and medium enterprises, assess how their policies and practices align with the sustainable development goals. It's a practical entry point to map where they are and where they can create more value for both business and society. Third, we advocate for enabling policies. ECOP collaborates with international and local organizations, including government agencies, so that ESG integration isn't just expected, it must be supported. And lastly, we recognize and promote best practices through an awards program. These awards shine a spotlight on companies that are doing ESG right, those that invest in their people, adopt sustainable practices, and strengthen their governance. These stories inspire others and create a ripple effect of responsible business conduct. There are specific examples on ESG that companies in the Philippines are doing. First, in the area of environment, for example. Let me cite the case of one manufacturing firm that invested in energy efficiency and waste reduction, thus cutting costs while opening doors to new export markets. A business process outsourcing company prioritized mental health and inclusive hiring, resulting in stronger retention and productivity. And lastly, a family-run enterprise adopted governance reforms that help them secure sustainable financing. So we're seeing that ESG is not just about compliance. It is about competitiveness and resilience. And the Employers Confederation of the Philippines is proud to be a part of that journey with Philippine businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a question for all of you. I think we all agree that to turn sustainability into opportunities for workers and employers, it needs to be done through collaboration and through dialogue. So I'd like to ask first to our partners in the Philippines, Gigi and then Rola, how are you achieving that? How are you talking to each other to make sure that this is happening? And to my colleagues at the ILO, first Laura and then Ariel, how can the ILO can help in this collaboration, in this dialogue? Gigi?
Okay. Collaboration between workers and employers ensures sustainability. Plans are grounded and inclusive. Workers bring real-world insights, while employers can align transition efforts with industry needs. The ILO can strengthen this cooperation by providing, which they are currently doing, technical support, building dialogue platforms, and promoting tripartite mechanisms. especially for informal and climate vulnerable sectors. This collaboration leads to effective policies, global challenges, and positive changes in people's lives, ultimately driving decent work outcomes. So it's basically the social dialogue and the tripartite mechanisms that are in place that are actually collaborative methods for us to make sure that sustainability of just transition is in place.
Okay. Roland?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I look at it from the perspective of both opportunities and challenges, but at the same time, I look at it as a great window for transformation. The biggest opportunity lies in leveraging social dialogue as a strategic tool, not just a compliance mechanism. When employers and workers engage meaningfully, they can co-create solutions. And that's very important to some of the biggest sustainability issue. Social dialogue builds trust, and trust is the foundation for agility, innovation, and long-term resilience. And then when we see the tripartite collaboration among government, employers, and workers, is very essential for a just transition, because no one can do it alone. The challenge, however, is capacity and mindset. There are workplaces that may still not be ready to have these conversations. Either the mechanisms for dialogue are weak, or there's a gap in understanding the value of these partnerships in driving ESG and SDG outcomes. In some cases, social dialogue is reactive rather than proactive. So moving forward, we must invest in strengthening institutional mechanism, build capacity on both sides, and shift the narrative from confrontation to collaboration, and from short-term transactions to long-term transformation.
Which is not always easy. Laura, how do you think we can help from the ILO, from the Bureau of Employers Activities, to promote this collaboration and social dialogue?
Thanks, Isabella. I'm not sure I can say it much better than Gigi and Roland have said it. But from our perspective, it's exactly as what Ariel also picked up on. It's really around this future proofing. And I think social dialogue has a very key role to play in that. And particularly through the bureaus, we have a role in terms of capacity building. And that's really where we've been angling in order to be able to support our social partners within contexts like the Philippines, but also elsewhere, to be able to engage in these types of discussions, which particularly in the realm of ESG, for us, it's really necessary that these are fit for purpose, really, and designed within the national context and for the national needs, particularly because some of this is often driven from external factors sometimes, which can be an important driver. But of more importance is how the country itself and the social partners within the country want to understand that and to take that in the future.
Ariel, I think you also have lots to say about how the Bureau of Workers' Activities can help.
I think I would tend to repeat what they have already said. No, I think a key element here in all these is capacity building. But it's not just about capacity building, it's about innovative capacity building, one that builds the individual to make sure that that individual makes change, and that change in a way contributes to a very positive and enabling environment. And that is the real essence of capacity building. We cannot be anymore in the business of having this business as usual approach to capacity building, but we need to be more innovative, thinking of ways and means of how we can harness the experience, the expertise of the employers and the workers organizations, and very useful what Roland said, trying to co-create things, because I think that is the best element that the both social partners can bring into the discussion, into the social dialogue mechanism. By working together, workers and employers organizations, they can bring innovative policy solutions on the table, and that's so that the government can listen more and the people can appreciate more the roles of the social partners, and that in a way also make sure that we don't leave anyone behind in the whole discussion. So I think capacity building that is innovative, that is inclusive, and that makes sure that we are not doing the business as usual, but trying to make sure that the co-creation process exists. Of course, it's easier said than done, but I think with examples that we've had in the Philippines, I mean, I'm sure they will be bringing more of these elements into the discussion. I mean, I would say that the Leaders Forum is one classic example of how workers and employers organizations are pushing labor reform agenda processes in a more positive way and trying to make the government act more on their commitments to ensuring an enabling environment for example, freedom of association and collective bargaining. So I think there's lots to do there, but I think as Laura said, we need to make sure that it is contextualized in the national setting and it brings into the focus the needs and the aspirations of those that are going to benefit and those that are going to make sure that to implement these efforts and these initiatives.
As you just said, I think inclusiveness, social dialogue, collaborations are key word in these transitions, and these are the words that we're going to use to close our conversation today. Is there any urgent matter, any urgent thing that you would like to underline before we close?
I think for one, this platform, the ILC plus the tripartite bodies are good avenues for us to be able to sustain all those that we've done back home and bring it to the world, to the workers' front, and also to be able to help us strengthen what we've been fighting for from the very beginning.
Okay, thank you very much for all. Thank you very much for being here. So that's all for today's episode. We have been talking about turning sustainability into opportunities for employers and workers. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us again for more conversations on the key issues shaping the world of work. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and insights on X at ILO, on Facebook at International Labour Organization, on LinkedIn, International Labour Organization as well, Instagram, ILO.org, and YouTube, ILO TV. So until next time, take care and goodbye from all of us here at the ILO in the International Labour Conference here in Geneva. Thank you very much.